Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. This is Taliesin McKnight, and today's subject is the proper timing for magic. In witchcraft, casting spells, there is the idea that there are certain times that are better for magic than others, and that some certain times are more appropriate for love spells, while others are more fortuitous for money drawing spells, things like that. Now, how important is this? Magic can be used at any time. If there is an emergency, then you should do it when you need it. For example, if you have a healing that needs to be done, so magic can be done at any time. You don't have to go by timing. However, the idea is that it's like swimming against a current of sorts. Whereas if you align with the cycles of nature, then you are going with the current. Now, it's interesting that I happen to make this video on the autumnal equinox. This is about aligning with the tides and rhythms of nature, natural cycles within nature, such as the rising of the sun, the passages, the phases of the moon, things like that. These represented deep philosophical ideas to the ancients. The rising of the sun, the phases of the moon, the passage of the seasons. You'll notice that most religions in the world have a seasonal calendar. Their religious observances happen within certain tides of nature. For example, in Hinduism, their religious holidays follow natural cycles. In ancient Greece, Rome, in ancient Egypt, in the sacred groves of the Druids, all over the ancient world, every ancient culture known to man has religious festivals, sacred times, aligned with the natural rhythms of nature. So that every culture on the planet had the idea that during changes, shifts in the seasons, during shifts from day to night, this is a doorway in a sense. The Celts believed in threshold times, when the veil between the worlds is very thin. Even Christianity has based some of its holidays on seasonal timing. For example, Christmas, the birth of the light of the world, happens on the darkest night of the year when the day starts to become longer. This is the winter solstice. Easter in Christianity, the spring equinox. It happens on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. It represents light overcoming the darkness. The Assumption of the Virgin Mary in the Catholic Church happens around the time, not exactly, that the sun enters the sign of Virgo, the Virgin, in astrology and the zodiac. So anyways, magical timing. You see this in voodoo. In voodoo, as a West African religious tradition, it mostly has to do with different loa, or spirits of voodoo, corresponding to certain days. For example, Baron Samedi and the Gede, the voodoo spirits of death on a Saturday. As an example, y'all, ceremonial magic uses planetary days and hours. And in Wicca, a lot of times they go by planetary days, but also the phases of the moon. As I said, magic can be done anytime, whenever you need it. But going with the cycles, the cosmic cycles and the currents of energy, supposedly, this is like swimming with the tide. It's a little easier. And going against the timing is like swimming against the current. You could still do it, It's just not taking advantage of these threshold points in nature. Now, you'll notice that in a lot of these cycles it represents life and death, the phase of life. For example, the rising sun is birth. As the sun goes towards noon, it's growth, maturity, and when the sun sets, this is death. And in different mythologies and different ancient cultures, at nighttime the sun was said to be dead and go through the underworld. For example, the ancient Egyptians had the god Ra, who at sunset, the god Ra, according to the Book of Gates, which is an ancient Egyptian text dating back to the 18th dynasty of Egypt, the Book of Gates and the Book of Tuat, these are two ancient Egyptian texts that we could look at, where during the nighttime the sun god Ra is said to go through the underworld on his boat through the land of the dead. And the phases of the moon, you have birth at the crescent, the maiden, the young girl, the full moon, the mother, and then the old woman, the crone. So the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun. This is birth, life, death at sunset, going through the land of the dead and rebirth. So to ancient cultures, this was a life cycle. And yet, in the year, you also have sunrise and sunset. You have winter, which is death. Plants seem to be dead, frozen. The ground is not very fertile in the northern hemisphere. And then at spring equinox, everything blooms with life. Everything is green. This is life. This is birth. In the summer, everything's really fertile, full of energy. This is maturity. And at the autumn equinox, the plants seem to die. This is death. So in the moon, the sun, all these cycles seem to resemble life and death. And these were ancient mysteries. The ancient mystery cults had a hidden doctrine, their secret mystical teachings through the tides and rhythms of nature. So anyways, 3 things I want to talk about when it comes to magical timing. 3 things to consider in this video. These are the phases of the moon, how to use the phases of the moon to help your magic spells. The phases of the moon. And we will also get into planetary days and hours and astrological aspects to spell casting. First of all, the phases of the moon. This is used in several ancient cultures. Today, it's really popular in the Wiccan religion, Hoodoo, different magical traditions use the moon to help their magic. Now, this is how it goes, y'all. The growing moon, when the moon is increasing and full, this is a time for bringing in, for increase or growth. So when the moon is increasing and full, this is a time to bring in love, good luck, money, things like that. This is a time for growth. So love spells, money spells, good luck, things like that, job promotions, growth when the moon grows and full. When the moon is decreasing or going away and new, this is a time for getting rid of something, such as losing weight, getting rid of a negative situation. This is destruction and creation. So you have creation and destruction, life and death, bringing in and taking away. So you have life, death, creation, destruction, expansion, and contraction. These are 2 opposite sides to a coin. You have the 2 pillars on King Solomon's temple, Jachin and Boaz, the twin pillars of Hermes, the twin pillars on the tree of life, Jachin and Boaz. In the middle pillar, you have the 2 serpents around the staff of Hermes, the reconciliation of opposing forces. Therefore, at its most basic, when the moon is growing and full, you do magic to to bring in good luck, love, things like that. It's for gain, growth. When the moon is going away, when the moon's decreasing and new, that's when you get rid of something. You get rid of a negative situation. You do a spell to lose weight. You cleanse. This is removing. So bringing in and getting rid of. Very simple. Just look at the moon. If it's growing, that's a good time to bring things into your life. If the moon's waning, that's a good time to destroy, get rid of the old. So life and death, creation and destruction. Remember earlier in the video, I talked about how these cycles represent life and death. So that is the phases of the moon. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the 7 planets, planetary days and hours. These are used in Wicca to a lesser extent. Very important in most forms of Western ceremonial magic tradition. For example, in the grimoires, you see this a lot. And also in Hoodoo tradition and African-American folk magic, you also see these planetary days and hours. Sometimes you see it in Hoodoo, sometimes. How this goes is we have the Earth, okay, and then we have 7 planets. They're called planets, but really the sun and moon are included. Celestial bodies closest to the Earth. The moon, sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. These 7 planets, or celestial bodies, because the moon and sun are included, you see these as a great cosmic clock, and it aligns with the zodiac and things like that. So you imagine this clock. It's like a great cosmic clock. Okay? This is what they believed in ancient Babylon. This is what they believed in Egypt, Alexandrian Egypt. This is what they believed in ancient Greece. This trickled down through the Middle Ages, through the Renaissance to the modern days. So we can trace this to ancient Babylon. We do have natal charts, some of the oldest in the world in Chaldea in Babylon. So anyways, okay, very ancient idea. Imagine a clock, but with 7 hands, moving at different speeds. This is the zodiac. This is the an astrological picture of where the planets align. If there does exist some kind of an etheric energy or astral light, and that these energies influence each other, if some people believe that, these planets can be utilized. Now, how do you use timing with the 7 planets? How do you do that? Well, in ancient Greece and Rome, the 7 planets corresponded to 7 days of the week. Ancient Greece and Rome. The sun rules Sunday. The moon rules Monday. Mars is Tuesday. Wednesday is Mercury. Thursday is ruled by Jupiter. Friday is Venus. And Saturday is Saturn Day. Saturn. Now, the names of the days of the week in English derive from the Norse pantheon of these same deities. Sunday, Sunday, day of the sun. Moon day, the moon, Monday. Tuesday is Tu, or Tyr, the Norse god of war, Mars. Wednesday is Woden's day, Jupiter, or Odin, Woden. Thursday is Thor. Friday is Freya, the Norse Venus or Aphrodite. Saturn Day, Saturday. So even the names of the days of the week. In Latin, you have the same thing. So, very ancient idea. This goes back thousands of years. If you're doing a work for the sun, you do it on a Sunday. If you're doing something for love, do it on a Friday, ruled by Venus. So, if you're doing something to bring money or success, this could be done on Thursday, ruled by Jupiter. It could be done on a Sunday, connected to the sun, whatever. If you're looking for communication, education, that's ruled by Mercury, so Wednesday. So the 7 days of the week correspond to the 7 planets. Okay? So you have two things to consider. When the moon is growing and full, you create, you bring in. When the moon is decreasing and new, you get rid of, you destroy. 7 days of the week, the 7 planets. Venus rules love, so love spells on a Friday. So a full moon or a growing moon on a Friday is ideal. You also, if you want to get a little bit more detailed, you go into the planetary hours. This is very important in Western ceremonial magical tradition. You divide the day into 12, and you have the planetary hours of the day. You divide sunset to sunrise, you have the planetary hours of night. So there's also the idea that different planets rule at different times of the day. Whatever planet rules the day, if you're doing something for the sun, a Sunday at sunrise, or for Mercury, a Wednesday at sunrise, or for Venus, Friday at sunrise, you don't have to do this. But it's believed to help. Some people believe it. I'm not saying whether it's true or not. You've got to draw your own conclusion. But these are very old, very ancient. By ancient, I mean thousands of years old. For thousands of years, magicians have used these principles. And this is traditional teaching. This does not go back in a lineage of witchcraft back about 60 years. This goes back not 200 years, but 2,000 years. I feel like I'm a car salesman. Not $69.99, not $89.99, but $59.99. Anyways, okay, getting off topic. So, you have that. Planetary days and hours and the phases of the moon. One more thing to consider is the weather. If you're doing a working for the moon, it should probably be at nighttime. This is just common sense. If you're doing a working with the sun, it should be during a sunny day when the sun's out. You don't want to do a working for the sun when it's real cloudy. If you really want to get into astrology, then you'll look at what sign the planet is in, whether it's in, you look at the dignities of the planets. Some signs of the zodiac are detrimental, some are positive for that. You could look at different aspects with other planets. Typically, you don't want Saturn or Mars. Anyways, that's getting way into this that's a little deeper. So basically, the moon's growing, bring in, decrease, and get rid of. And if you want to, you could also follow the planetary days and hours if you want to get really in depth. One more thing to consider is your own internal conditions. It's really important in magic to be able to transform your consciousness and to evoke that force from your psyche. By that, I mean, if you're calling on a force out there, you have to bring it to the surface in here. For example, if you're working with Mars, you have to bring up your own aggression and anger, your own aggression when doing a martial working. If you're working for success, you have to bring up the idea of success. So whatever you're trying to do, your mindset is important. You have to bring your thought and your emotion to one pointed concentration on the goal. So anyways, just some things to consider. Phases of the moon, days of the week. Now also you could consider seasons. But seasons happen once a year, so that's a little bit restricting. Some people do get into the rising, setting sun, all of that as threshold periods, but then the planetary days and hours also look at where the sun is. So anyways, the moon, planetary days and hours, and that's just one way to look at magical timing. Again, if it's an emergency, you can do magic anytime you want. But the idea is that it's like swimming against the current. If you follow the tides and rhythms of nature, then it's like swimming with the current. The current takes you. It makes it easier. Okay? And these represented deep mysteries. These are symbols that have really deep meaning. So these are mysteries. Anyways, that is a brief introductory look at magical timing for spells and witchcraft. Thank you for joining me. Once again, this is Taliesin McKnight. And have a great day, y'all. Oh, and today's the autumn equinox. Happy autumn equinox.